My name is Matt English Hayden, and this is Jim Hogan, my neighbour. Last August, my son Donal, age 16, was killed in a farm accident on Jim's farm. He'd just done the junior cert, do you know what I mean? And he was in school, not big. And he wasn't your typical child that loves school, but he always had his homework done. And he always wanted to come home to the farm to see where real life was going on. And then sport was his passion, I suppose, other than farming. And he played hurling, which I suppose is the main sport in the family, for the lads in particular, and then athletics, where everybody took part in it. As Father Con said at his funeral mass, he was known to quite a few referees, not for scoring, but for other things, but passionate about it. And he was his All-Ireland medals for pole vaulting, and Leinster for that as well, and then county medals for long jump, high jump, and other athletics and things like that, And he gave up rugby because he was had a slight knee injury where his ligaments were detaching. Only for that he'd have that on his CV as well. But just he loved life, and he loved anything that was interesting. Whether it was geography, he grew stuff here that no one ever grew. Do you know what I mean? When he grew pumpkins that were that size, he grew sweet corn when he was no size in the tunnel. Everything and anything was of interest to him. Do you know what I mean? And food. And he used to work with Donal in the kitchen. Now, not that he was a great cook, but he was very interested in what was new could be made out of what he grew. And that was his life. Do you know what I mean? He was known all over the country as a result, because he was just, there was no second agenda. It was all straight up front. Do you know what I mean? Passionate, fun. Do you know what I mean? And competitive. His dream was that he was going to go to the Olympics to be a pole vaulter for Ireland. And obviously it didn't happen, but when we were watching the Olympics this year, that was the one thing that came to mind, because he knew everyone in the world that was a pole vaulter, and he knew all the different equipment that he was going to try and save up to buy. Do you know what I mean? And just, we have the memories. That's all we have. Do you know what I mean? They're very, very good ones. Do you know what I mean? And they're not spoiled by anything other than he's gone.
We'd start to work at 9:30, and we were filled the trail, and we at the top end of the field, and we decided to go up back to get a cup of tea. So naturally, what happens on most farms is lads jumped into the trailer, and I drove back along by the river, exactly in the same path as we'd driven the day before, which was only 24 hours previous. And we were about a third of the way down along by the river, heading back for the house, and next minute the trailer, just the bank gave way, and trailer ended up in the river with the tractor. The two machines ended up upside down in the river, and we all ended up, there was 6 of us there that day. We all ended up in the river, and we could hear shouting, and it was Donal's brother Mosey. His leg was caught in under the trailer, and Matty got to him. Myself and Matty got to him, and Matty got to hold him and keep his head up above the water. But we realised we couldn't see Donal, so I fell down around. Mosey said he could feel something in his leg, and I went down in the water. The water was about up to our waist or a little bit more, and I could feel Donal. He was held about here. His hands and his head was out. I was able to hold on to his hand. So I suppose the first thing, we naturally, you try to lift the trailer, but we were at nothing. We couldn't budget at all, and so I asked Dermot and Keith, two lads that work with me as well, to go back and get a chain and a digger, and all our mobile phones, with 4 mobile phones between the 6 of us, and they all ended up in the water. So we had no phone to ring anyone, and we were a good bit away from the house. We were 2 fields away from the house. So I asked Dermot and Keith to go back and get the digger and to call an ambulance. And the lads went back, and I was able to hold Donal's hand, and Matty was able to hold holding Mosey over the wire. The lads got back in what seemed to be very little time. It was got back with the digger. We secured the chain to the trailer, and we got to lift the trailer, and we got Mosey out, got his leg out, and we got Donal out within a matter of less than a minute, I'd say. We got Donal out onto the bank, and myself and Matty started doing CPR. So we knew that an ambulance had no hope of getting down to where we were through a beat field, and we didn't know whether to put Donal on the digger and stop CPR, or whether to go back. And what we decided to do was to go back with the digger, go back to the yard, and the lads we knew the ambulance wouldn't be that quick coming out, so they went back and they got a pallet, and we were able to they came back down, and we kept doing CPR on the bank of the river, and we laid Donal out on the pallet, and as the lads were driving back, myself and Matty were able to keep doing CPR on the pallet the whole way up to the gate. And just as we were getting to the gate, the ambulance arrived right at the gate, so there was no time wasted, and the ambulance crew took over then, and Donal was brought to Kilkenny Hospital.
And there he obviously was rushed to theatre, and they did exploratory surgery, which basically was to find out the extent of his injuries and everything, but unfortunately he was under the water too long, effectively, and he was pronounced dead in that afternoon.
It wasn't a dangerous job what we were at. It was a freak accident, and I think if someone had said to us that day that an accident was going to happen, we never ever would have predicted that that's how it would have happened. It was maybe due to all the rain that had come that night, and as I said the day before, we had driven down that very same path and nothing had happened. We had ploughed along it the year before. We had cut corn. Combines would have gone down along it. So we just didn't expect any danger in what we were doing. We had, myself and Keith and Dermot had actually done a farm safety course 3 months prior to the accident that ABP Food Group had organised, and the three of us sat down to Kilkenny and did it was a day, half a day's course in farm safety. And little did we know, leaving that course, there was about 28 people on it, but little did we know that we would be probably one of the next headlines on the 9 o'clock news of a tragedy. I suppose from my perspective, and I think Matt would agree that he knows that everything that from the time the accident happened, we did everything that we could have done, and that is even just a simple thing like I had to ice that in the river. Well, I was out to get Keith and Dermot, and they knew where the chain was, because the chain is always put back. It's a tidy farm. The chain is put back where it always is. Keith had said to me after that, if that had been his farm, he might have been half an hour looking for that chain. And I think if you had been half an hour looking for the chain, or even if you'd been 5 minutes looking for the chain, that's 5 minutes that we'd be wondering if we'd known where that chain was, we might have, the consequence might have been different, but
in a situation like that,
yeah,
from our children went over to Jim's, totally confident that it was a lovely place to send your children to work, and we can still say the same thing. It was just very unfortunate. Anything that could be done that would make a difference was already in place. The place was tidy. Everything had its proper place. Farm safety was done. We knew how to do CPR. These are the things that could make a difference when an accident happens. In this case, it didn't. But in 90% of other cases, it could save a life. And that's something that is a comfort to both of us.
Yeah.
But not just the two of us, but our families and even to our neighbours. Because Donal's death affected everyone in the parish.
Every May before the silage, we service all our tractors, and the tractor that we used that day it was the smallest tractor because that's what we needed to get into the drills a beat. But it had been serviced, and I suppose that was a comfort to us that everything was working right, brakes and everything, and just there can be a lot of tractors out on farms, and farmers might say, sure, I don't have that on the road. The handbrake doesn't work, but sure, I don't bring it out on the road. But you do have to have it working, and it's important to have everything right. And at least if something does happen, that that is a little bit of consolation. And also another thing that I think is important, there was 4 mobile phones there that day, and every one of them ended up in the river. And people looking at this here today would say, "Oh, I mightn't be that unfortunate," but we were. And even if you have names of your neighbouring farmer on a door or on a shed somewhere, that if something happens, like my neighbour, I might have my neighbouring farmer's number on my phone, but my wife mightn't have it, or if I was caught under something and my phone was in a slurry tank or it was in a river or wherever, that you have a number there somewhere that can ring the neighbouring farmer to come, because that's who you need instant help straight away.
It's very, very important. Now, it didn't make any difference in our case, but it could. We realised, if Donal had been badly injured, or
or if we didn't have a digger.
If we didn't have a digger.
We would have had to go to the nearest neighbour to get a digger. We lost our mobile phones. Would we have had that neighbour's number?
Yeah.
No, he wasn't on anyone else's phone. It's important to have them numbers, and in the event of an accident, that might save a life.
Yeah, the emergency services are not within half a mile. Your neighbours aren't, because the price is too big.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I know when someone elderly dies, you expect them to die or whatever, it's the natural process. But when someone dies like that, the shock is very brutal. That's the simplest way of saying it. It's very, very brutal. Do you know what I mean? And if you have to add guilt to it or blame, it's not a good thing. It should never happen.